Welcome back and thanks so much for staying with us. Now, the One Young World Summit took place in Zurich recently, and it's a global forum that brings together young leaders to discuss issues affecting the youth around the globe. And to talk more about this, we're joined by Lynn Madeley. She is the CEO of RSCG South Africa, as well as Zamantungwa, Khumalo and Lesley Masibi. They represented South Africa at the summit. To both of you, or all three of you, welcome and thanks so much for joining us. Lynn, give us the context of the One Young World Summit.
Yeah, I think it was started by David Jones and Kate Robinson, who are the global CEO of RSCG and UK chairman, because they saw that young people had so much to offer the world, and yet they weren't necessarily being given enough of a voice. And so they started what we call the movement, One Young World. And essentially, it's very much like a young person's Davos. And the caliber of people and the caliber of the work that's coming out of One Young World is absolutely amazing. And I think Lesley and Zama will be able to tell you a lot more about what happened in Zurich.
Yeah, because it's the approach, I think, when dealing with youth-related issues that you've spoken at and not given much involvement. How did this platform enable you to raise some of the concerns you have about young people in South Africa?
I mean, like you said, rightly so, that One Young World is a different platform from many of the youth summits that we have, because young people are tasked with taking concrete action when they get back home. How do we take ownership of life difference making in our own nations? And in essence, we come back here after being challenged in a conference and a platform such as One Young World, and we implement project, be it social business, be it a charity, whatever that we can do as young people to drive change and what we want to see happening in our world. And how do we become politically active to ensure that we hold accountable all sectors, whether private or government, in terms of we are creating our own world.
Yeah. How effective is it, though? Because like you were saying, the Davos, we've seen the World Economic Forums, a lot of critics suggesting that it's just a talk shop, nothing much materially comes out of it. Zamantungwa?
I think, you know, it's very different from what, like Lesley was mentioning, from other summits, and how, you know, it's not just a talk shop, there's a call of action after the summit. So we have various resolutions in the 6 plenary sessions that we have, from global business to environment, you know, to leadership. And you find that various delegates who later you become an ambassador after you've attended the summit have projects that they, you know, they start in their various countries and their various communities. And a lot of those, you know, some of them become as big as, you know, being countrywide or being continental. So I think that's what's different from this one, is that there is that call of action, there is that sense of immediacy that you need to go back home and do something, you know, to address some of the things that you see in your communities.
Yeah, how much influence do you have, though, politically? Because if you take South Africa, where the youth are not necessarily a designated group and may not be given priority when it comes to big contracts or making meaningful changes, how do you assist in enabling these projects to have some form of life?
Look, I think part of it is the delegates go through a very big vetting process. So we are already working with people who are actively making changes in their communities. So they really are already on the road to future leadership. What One Young World does is it accelerates that. And if you talk to these guys about some of the things that they're already doing before the summit, it's huge. What this does is it just focuses and it gives them some assistance and I think motivation to actually be able to see what else they can do. And when Bob Geldof stands up there and says, be unreasonable, you can say that to a 25-year-old and they will be unreasonable. If you say it to a 40-year-old, they'll say, I won't do that. And you need to be unreasonable to change the world.
What do you do, Lesley?
I'm working for the National Youth Development Agency, recently joined them. But like Lynn said, I think it's not necessarily the question that we should be asking what the government can do for us. We are trying to change that mindset. We are saying as young people, what can we do? We're taking ownership of this country, taking ownership of our livelihoods, and we are taking proactive action to ensure that we make South Africa what we want it to be. And we engage with corporate South Africa. We go out to businesses and we say, we demand that you help us, you assist us in doing 1, 2, 3, 4 because you have a social responsibility. We are saying that we are going to be unreasonable as young people.
Yeah. Are you getting any joy? Zamantungwa, maybe you can tell us what your projects are and some of the frustrations when it comes to the rigidity and how business is done, and the fact that the youth are still largely ignored.
I mean, right now, a project that I'm involved in, I started it not so long ago, is with a group of students at Wits University. That's where I study. We're organizing the first annual Golden Key Thinkers Symposium, and it's literally it's organized by young people, where we're saying, you know, these are certain issues that we need to speak about. So we're talking leadership in Africa, we're talking youth culture and identity, you know, thinking Ubuntu, thinking, climate change. And some of the speakers we have include your Joel Nititenzes, Trevor Manuel's one of the speakers, Kaya Dlanga. And we're saying that we're bringing people who are sort of leaders in their fields to talk about certain issues, you know, that are important and that need to be addressed. And I think some of the frustrations, you know, sometimes, not just in this project, but just generally in the project, is sometimes you may be undermined as a young person. So, you know, Lesley spoke about how we challenge, you know, business leaders. So if you go into a boardroom and you want maybe funding from someone, they may not necessarily want to give you funding because you don't have collateral or because you're young. So I think that's some of the frustrations that young people would generally face. And I think you need to counter them. You need to be smart about how, you know, you look for funding. You need to be smart about how you go about certain things. So as a young person, you know, I'm in business. You don't need a shop to run certain businesses. Just go online. So that's what I do. I've just gone online. And, you know, there's free blogging. You use social media. I'm huge on Twitter and Facebook. And some of my clients I've found from Twitter and Facebook. So I think as young people, we just need to be very smart about how we go about doing some of the things that have been done by, our, you know, the older generation. Just use the tools that we have to do it.
Yeah. And Lynn, I mean, in this country we have the population, 50% of the population are young people, of which 75% of those are in the peripheral, unemployed, uneducated, etc. So how do we spread this to really make a meaningful impact in that sector?
That's the beauty of One Young World. If you take an individual company and they go out and do a feeding scheme, they can only feed a certain amount of people. But if you take the 160 delegates that came from Africa, they will then all be able to go out and feed lots of people. And I suppose it's the old analogy of teaching people to fish, not giving them the fish. And that is the magic of One Young World. That's what it does.
Yeah. So what's your next big dream? Besides being president, I suppose you have to start with CEO of NYDA.
I mean, it starts with how do we, young people, like you said, one of the most marginalized people in society, in our society, how do we find a platform to represent them? And how do we do that effectively? How do we take their interest in heart? How do we not manipulate their interest and use it for our own benefit? So I'm saying that as a young person, my next big move is to ensure that we have a platform where young South Africans can be represented equally, and they'll be given those opportunities. How do we mobilize them so that their voices are being heard at the toppest platforms that exist in our country?
Yeah, and Zamantungwa, I think we all need to sort of change the way we've always done things. And I like the phrase that be unreasonable, be demanding, and make sure that you see things through. So in your space, what is the next big project that you'll be following?
I'm currently actually registering a media company. I think one of the things that I've found as a young person, I mean, I have a radio show at the campus radio station, is that, you know, young people are misrepresented in the media. So if you look at South Africa and look at the media in South Africa, you think young people are young leadership. Some people might say Julius Malema, and some people might think, you know, we're all about parties and drinking. But the reality is there are people like the Lesleys and other delegates, you know, who are doing incredible things out there, and yet they're not being represented in the media. And why is that? Or we only get to hear about them on Youth Day, and that's problematic because we're running projects throughout the year. So I think for me that's the next big move, making sure that that becomes the platform that Lesley says, you know, where young people can be showcased.
Okay, so Lynn, our entry is open then for the summit for next year, and what is the criteria? What do you look for?
We look for people who have already got a history in having done good in their communities. They need to have degree-level education, and preferably they need to have people who are actually prepared to vouch for the things that they've done. The next summit is in 2012 in Pittsburgh, but in 2013 we are very proud to be able to say that it's coming to Johannesburg.
Wow.
So I think that gives a fantastic opportunity for young South Africans to get much more involved because the summit will be on their doorstep.
All right.
But if you want details, go to www.oneyoungworld.com.
All right, thanks so much to all of you for coming through. You truly inspired me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
We're
much.
speaking to Lynn Madeley. She is the CEO of Euro RSCG SA, as well as Zamantungwa, Khumalo and Lesley Masibi. They represented South Africa at the One Young World Summit, which took place in Zurich recently. That website address, oneyoungworld.com, oneyoungworld.com. We'll take a quick ad break. I'll see you shortly.